Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am here with another reading recap. It's been a few weeks since I have touched base and talked about my most recent reads and what I'm actively reading. So I figured while I had a little bit of time today, I would sit down and have a chat with you all about what has been going on in my reading life. And first and foremost, I apologize that I haven't been posting as many videos lately. I was hoping that I was getting to a place where I would be able to put out more videos, but we're getting really close to the holidays and things are chaotic and I haven't been able to do as much as I wanted to, so I do apologize, but I do have some video ideas. I have some videos that I plan on doing and yeah, hopefully I can get my stuff together and make sure that I am posting videos on a more routine schedule. Fingers crossed, you know, life goals. So first let's talk about some of my most recent reads, and then I'll talk about what I'm actively reading and maybe some of the books that I'm hoping to get to soon. So the first book I want to talk about is The Mighty Red by Louise Erdrich, and this is a book that was on my anticipated reads list from October, and I got a copy right away from my library, so I made sure that I prioritized it while I had it. And this is my second Erdrich. I have also read The Sentence. I think that that was her release prior to this one. So my only experience with her writing has been her more recent reads. And I enjoy her books. I really do like her writing. I think that the thing I like most about her writing is the way that she writes her characters, and the plots are okay, but it's really the characters and their interactions that really sell her books for me. Now, this book is about, there's several characters and there's kind of two main plot lines. So first we have a woman by the name of Crystal, and Crystal is a sugar beet farmhand and she struggles to make ends meet. Her and her daughter Kismet, they don't really have a whole lot, but they have what they need and they get by. There is news that Crystal's husband is accused of stealing a whole bunch of money from the church and he is on the run, and there's a lot of questions and speculation about where he is, what happened to the money, was Crystal involved, etc. So that's kind of one of the plot lines. But the real focus of the story is on her daughter Kismet, and Kismet is at the center of a bit of a love triangle. So we have her, Kismet is young, she's just out of high school, and she is in love with this man named Gary. And Gary is actually the son of the owners of the farm that Crystal works on. And he is in line to inherit the family farm, and he comes from privilege and wealth, and he offers security for Crystal. And then we have Hugo. So Hugo is kind of the opposite of Gary. He is more intellectual, he is into books, he more aligns with Crystal's interests and her personality, but he doesn't have the stability or the protection that Gary can offer her. So she is kind of torn between those two lives, and she agrees to marry Gary, and her life doesn't end up being what she thought it would be, because all of these family secrets start to come out, and she realizes that a life with Gary also means a life with his family. And I really did like that part of the story. So we learn a lot about what makes these characters tick, what's their motivation, what drives them, and also what holds them back. And like I said, I really love the way that Erdrich writes her characters. I love the interactions that she has between the characters, but what I think I disliked about this book was the way that the plot line with Crystal's husband ended up. To me, it seemed a little bit strange and it felt very out of place. It was a very beautiful story and there was a lot of stuff going on, and then that plot line kind of came to its conclusion and I was just scratching my head, and it just seemed to come very much out of left field. At the end of the day, I do think it was a good read. It was a good story. It was certainly something that is unique. I don't think that I have read a book quite like it. So yeah, I appreciated the book. It wasn't my favorite, but I am really glad that I read it. The next book that I finished is a book called Shark Heart by Emily Habeck, and this was a very unique and enjoyable story for me. And the premise sounds very strange. I completely understand that, but I really loved this book. So basically we have a couple, they're young, they're newly married. We have Louise and Ren, and very early on into the marriage, we notice that Louise starts to develop some health problems and some health issues. And he goes to the doctor and it is determined that he is actually slowly, due to this genetic defect that he has, he is turning into a shark. And the book is capturing not only his transition into that shark, but how their relationship changes and how Ren is dealing with the fact that she is slowly but surely losing her husband and she has absolutely no control over this happening. And not just the fact that she's losing her husband to this, metamorphosis, but the fact she's losing her husband that she is very much still in love with, and when she loses him, he is still something or someone that exists in the world. So that is very difficult for her to handle. And it was such a beautiful story. It was such a touching story. There were actually parts of this story where toward the end I was getting emotional and I was tearing up. And it sounds, like I said, like a silly premise that could very easily be campy and kitsch and just turn into a disaster. But the author handled the story with so much care, and we not only learn about that relationship that Ren had with her husband, but we go back into the past and learn about her childhood, her relationship with her mother, and also her daughter that she eventually has. And it's a beautiful story. I know I'm probably not selling it, but this was actually one of the more enjoyable reads that I have had. It wasn't a book that I necessarily would have picked up, but I love me some magical realism and I really did end up enjoying my time with this one. Another book that I was really looking forward to getting to by the end of the year was Where the Forest Meets the River by Shannon Bowring, and this is a follow-up to a book that I read earlier this year in the summer, which was called The Road to Dalton, I should say. And basically this follows a group of people that live in a small Maine town called Dalton. And this is a follow-up, it's a continuation of the characters that we met in the first book. And there is also some new characters that we are introduced to as well. And The Road to Dalton was such a great read for me. I love small town dramas. I love when you have a collection of characters that throughout the duration of the book, although it is one cohesive novel, it feels very much, or it could be, smaller short stories that are intertwined. Shannon Bowring is a writer that very much reminds me of Elizabeth Strout, and this has very huge Olive Kitteridge vibes, which I absolutely love. It's kind of like Olive Kitteridge with a more I would say modern voice maybe, although it's funny because The Road to Dalton was set in the early 90s. This book takes place in the mid 90s, so we are still talking about, you know, living in the past, but I think Shannon Bowring does have a very fresh and unique voice. And yeah, I enjoyed this as much as I liked The Road to Dalton. I absolutely love these characters. Their lives are messy, but they are so realistic. The things that happen to these characters are extremely relatable. We probably likely know someone in our lives that could match each of these characters, and I love the fact that it just feels very real, and it's quaint and it's cozy, and we're dealing with not only the good parts of life but the really ugly and sad parts of life as well. And she just has a knack for writing these great characters, and they are written in a way where you feel like you know them, and I am really looking forward to anything else that she writes in the future. I have heard rumors that there's going to be a third installment of this series. I don't know if that's been completely confirmed yet, but if so, I will absolutely be reading that and anything else that she puts out in the future, because I really do appreciate her writing style. And she's quickly becoming one of those authors that if I see that she has written something, I will definitely be picking that up. So the next book that I want to talk about is called Forgotten on Sunday, and this is by Valerie Perrin, and this was translated from the French by Hildegard Serle. And this book, it is set primarily in a nursing home, and we have a young woman. She is in her early 20s, and her name is Justine, and she is working in this care home, and she is working with patients that have dementia. She also lives with her grandparents and a cousin that she has treated like a brother. Her grandparents have raised her from a very young age when both her parents and her cousin's parents were killed in a car accident. So Justine has had a very tragic life, and she kind of uses her time that she works at this nursing home as a way to escape her life, and she finds solace in it, she finds comfort, and she eventually meets a woman or a patient by the name of Helene, and she learns Helene's life story. And at the time that she's learning Helene's life story, and Helene is taking her into her past and introducing her to that, there's also a visitor that comes in to see Helene that she also starts to bond with and connect with. And it's basically, you know, just like I said, an exploration of memory, of her inherited trauma that she has, the world that she is currently living in and trying to make a place in, but really hanging on to that tragic event that happened to her parents, and figuring out who she is in the world and where she actually wants to take her life to, and figuring out who you are as a person when what you are or you feel you are is defined for you at such a young age. And there's of course a lot of messiness. She learns about what she was told in the past about what happened to her parents is not actually what happened, and she starts to learn about all those ugly secrets that are starting to come out of the woodwork. And it was a book that I did enjoy. I will say I feel like it went on too long. I felt like it could have been shorter. There were a lot of times when I would get confused about the transition. I will say I read this book, I read the physical while I was listening to the audio, but there were times where I was just listening to the audio and then I'd pick up the physical again when I had a chance. I had a couple long car trips in there, so there were periods of time when I was just listening to the audio, and I found it difficult to keep up with where we were in the narrative. Was this a narrative of Helene telling us about her past, or, you know, the the delineation between one section to another, it was not very cohesive whenever I was listening to the audiobook, and that made it a little tough to follow the story a little, but I had an easier time when I was reading the physical book, but yeah, it was an okay story. It was a little sappy, it was a little sentimental. I think that that's probably to be expected from Valerie Perrin as far as her writing goes. I read a book of hers last year, I believe, called Freshwater for Flowers, which I actually preferred that one more than this one. And it's funny because this was a recent release, but I think that this particular book, Forgotten on Sunday, was written prior to Freshwater for Flowers. It being a piece of translated work, we get them as they're translated into English. I think that this one was actually an earlier book, but it was translated later than some of her others. So I think that I would still read another book from her if any more of hers were translated. But yeah, this one was just kind of mid for me. I'm glad that I read it, but I could have also done without it too. The next book that I want to talk about is We'll Prescribe You a Cat by Syou Ishida, and it was translated from the Japanese by E Madison Shimoda. And this is a very cozy, comforting, just kind of what the soul needs type of book. This is a book that is set up into 5 different short stories, and they all revolve around this mysterious mental health clinic. So all of the main characters in each of the stories are going through something challenging in life, and they go to this clinic and they are prescribed a cat to cure their ailments. And each of them, of course, is getting a cat that has its own unique personality, and the cat is impacting their life in the end in some positive way. And this book isn't going to win any great literary awards, and it's not going to be a critic's top 10 of the year, but it is that type of book that you can read and just feel at ease. You don't have to think too hard about it, and it's, like I said, kind of just what the soul ordered type of book. Reading a lot of literary fiction can be very emotional and draining. I read a lot of books that have a lot of harsh and tough subject matters to get through, and every once in a while I just need something lighthearted and cheerful, and that it makes me feel warm and fuzzy, and that's exactly what this book did. And I will always turn to books like this from time to time to get me, or I should say prevent me from getting into reading slumps. And this fit the bill perfectly. I also love cats, so that was certainly a help. I hear so many people talk about how they hate cats, and I personally believe that if you say you hate cats, you've just never earned the love of a cat, because cats are fantastic. And unlike dogs, now I love dogs too, do not get me wrong, but dogs love everyone. You do not have to earn the love of a dog, and to earn the love of a cat, I think, is such a special thing. And this book really focuses on that, and how rewarding having animals in our lives can be, especially cats. But I think for any animal lover, you could understand how having animals in your life can, make your life better and improve your quality of life. So this was just a great reminder, and I am really glad that I read it. The last book that I finished is The Long Island Compromise by Taffy, Brodesser-Akner, and this is a surprising read for me. This was a book that I had on my anticipated reads list for earlier this year, and when it came out, I never really heard anything about it. I had seen it in the bookstores and wasn't hearing anybody talk about it, didn't really hear many reviews, so it was kind of a book that I you know, was tempting to put on the bottom of my TBR and potentially being one that I never got to. And I'm so glad that I remembered to put this on hold at on Libby, because when the hold came through, I was like, oh yeah, I want to get to this, and I am so glad, because this was such an enjoyable read for me. So this book is a family saga, like on steroids. There's so much going on in this book. It starts in the 80s, and we have the patriarch of the family. His name is Carl, and he owns a styrofoam company on Long Island. Very wealthy family. He is also Jewish. The factory was actually handed down to him. So he came from a very wealthy Jewish family, and he is, you know, continuing the legacy. The book starts with him actually being kidnapped for a week from his Long Island home, and he turns up a week later. He was held for ransom. The ransom was delivered. Sorry guys, I'm not sure what happened. I ended up losing part of this clip, but anyway, so we have Carl ransom collected. He goes back to his normal life, and then we flash forward to, I think it's current day, and we start to follow the lives of his 3 children. So he has 2 sons and a daughter. The 2 sons were alive at the time that his kidnapping happened, and then his daughter was born afterward. And each of their lives is completely messed up. We have Beamer. He is a film screenwriter, and he is once again still very privileged, has a lot of money, and he has a ton of demons. Then we also have the other son, and he is at home, or he still lives in Long Island, I should say, and he is a lawyer, and he has his own problems. And then we have Jenny, the daughter, and she is, although she comes from privilege, she tries to hide that, and she tries to kind of distance herself from the family. But all of the things that are going on in their lives are still very much driven by that generational trauma that happened with the incident from their father. So there is news that happens, and their comfortable lifestyles become jeopardized, and things just really start to fall apart after the death of the grandmother, so Carl's mother. And this was such a fantastic book for any of you guys that like that rich people drama, the privileged drama, the families that have deep, dark secrets and try to keep things under the rug. This is going to be a perfect book for you. And then one of the most surprising parts of this book was, once I got to the end, there's an author's note, and we come to learn that all of this was actually based on, loosely, a true story. So the whole plot of the kidnapping, where the man was kidnapped briefly and then returned after the ransom was paid, that all happened to a real life person that Taffy somehow knew through family acquaintances, and she got his permission and the family's permission to use this as a loose plot line for the story. And yeah, I thought that that was really cool. And the person that it happened to in real life actually wrote a book about it. I think it was back in 2020, maybe 2020, about the story and what had happened. And yeah, so now I need to look into that book, because I think it's interesting to read a book like this and then a memoir where the inspiration from the story came from. So yeah, I loved this book. I really enjoyed my time with it, and I am so glad that I didn't give up on it. And I need to remember that just because I'm not hearing about books, or people aren't reading them, or I'm not seeing buzz about them on YouTube or elsewhere, doesn't mean that they're not worth picking up. They maybe just haven't found their audience yet. So if there are books that you're kind of in the same boat with, that you really want to read but you're not hearing anything about, just read it. Like, you might be the one that book was, perfect for, and it might be a book you really enjoy. It just hasn't made it into the mainstream yet. So I learned a lesson from picking up this book as well. So yeah, so those are the books that I have recently finished. I am actively reading a few books as well. I still am reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I am over the halfway point with that. I'm still reading Les Mis as my project read for the year. And I'm trying to think if there's any other, I also just yesterday picked up Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. That hold came in from the library for me, so that's another book that I should be getting done within the next few days, and it will likely be talked about on my next update video. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand right now in my reading life. There are a few books that I am looking forward or need to get to by the end of the year as well, but I also am further complicating my life. I'm trying to not be as busy, but yet I keep watching other people's YouTube videos, like Jess over at Stalking Kafka. She just did a video where she was talking about the Reindeer Readathon, and it sounds like so much fun. So I really didn't have a whole lot of reading plans for December, aside from trying to wrap up the current books that I am reading. So I thought that it might be fun to participate in that as well. I also watched a fantastic video that Gemma over at Gem of Books put together, where she was talking about, she's going to be turning 37, I believe, soon, and she wanted to compile a list of 40 books that she wanted to read by the time she was 40. And I started to think about, like, what a great idea that is, to have that next decade in mind and figure out how many books there are that you still want to read, and the books that you want to have done by the time you reach that age. So I am turning 44 on November 28th, and I decided that something that I want to do is sit down and think about those kind of bucket list books, or books that I've been meaning to get to for the longest time, and put on a list like that. Not something that I have to pressure myself to get to right this second, but a list that I can go to when I'm looking for something to read, and hopefully over the next 6 years, by the time I get to 50, I can have those books finished. So yeah, there are some, bookish things that I have in the back of my mind that I want to put videos together for. And of course, we will have our end of the year stuff happening soon. I know I did the end of the year book tag already, but we still have to come up with that list of my favorite reads from 2024. I didn't do this last year, but I think I'm also going to do a worst reads of 2024 as well. I think that sometimes, you have to take the bad with the good. So why not do a video about those books that disappointed me this year? And then of course, we're going to start to get into the Christmas holiday season. So I think that Reindeer Readathon is going to be a fun way to incorporate some of the holiday cheer into my channel. And yeah, It's a lot, but I'm excited, and I also love this time of year because we can start to think about those things that we want to do for next year, and we can start with a fresh slate. So yeah, it'll be a couple chaotic weeks ahead of us, but I'm very much looking forward to them. And until we read again, bye!